From Lagos, the nation's commercial capital, this is the News at 10. Live from Channels Television. Reporting tonight, Millicent Walker.
Tonight, Nigeria may engage in a showdown with the Indonesian authorities over assault on a diplomat. Foreign Affairs Minister condemns behavior of immigration officers involved as a breach of Vienna Convention. PDP Board of Trustees gives marching order to the party's national chairman, demands that convention holds in October this year. And it's a deadlock as meeting between National Assembly and the national leadership of resident doctors ends without any agreement. A New York Governor, Andrew Cuomo, resigns following report over sexual harassment in office. Plus, business, sports, news from Abuja, and later, international news from our studio in London.
On business news tonight, Minister of Finance Zainab Ahmed announces plan to introduce the 2021 Finance Act as part of government's efforts to reflate the economy.
On sports news tonight, it's a done deal as Argentinian superstar Lionel Messi finally signs a 2-year deal with PSG, Paris Saint-Germain, following his departure from boyhood club Barcelona.
Amnesty International releases new report on farmer-herder confrontation, blames federal government for not doing enough to contain crisis.
A big diplomatic row may be brewing between Nigeria and Indonesia following an assault meted on a Nigerian diplomat in Jakarta. Nigeria is threatening to review its relations with Indonesia if the country fails to announce an appropriate sanction against the immigration officials who carried out the brazen criminality against the diplomat. Foreign Affairs Minister Jeffrey Onyema today warned that such behavior against Nigerian diplomats will no longer be tolerated. He insists that the action is a breach of the Vienna Convention.
Good morning to everyone.
There was absolutely no justification whatsoever for this treatment, for this kind of behavior against not only a diplomat, a Nigerian diplomat, but even if it had taken place against any Nigerian citizen, it was totally unacceptable. And so what we have decided to do is to recall for consultations immediately our Nigerian ambassador in Jakarta, in Indonesia. And we will have full consultations at the highest level and decide what next steps to take, including a review, of course, of our relations with Indonesia. We have also requested the Indonesian government to take severe and appropriate sanctions against the immigration officials that were involved in this act of brazen criminality. Under international law, the Vienna Convention, diplomats and diplomatic premises are inviolable. And this was a clear breach of the Vienna Convention and an act of egregious international delinquency.
And from international relations to party politics, call it a soft landing, and you may not be wrong, as the Board of Trustees of the People's Democratic Party today gave a marching order to the chairman of the party, Mr. Uche Secondus, to immediately constitute a planning committee for the party's convention, which has now been brought forward from December to October this year. Earlier on, there had been protests at the national headquarters of the party, with the voices of the pro-Uche Secondus and anti-Secondus protesters renting the air around the premises. Present at the intervention meeting were some serving governors, which include governors of Delta, Bayelsa, Adamawa, Taraba, amongst others.
For a second time in 2 days, Pro and anti-Secondus protesters barricade the entrance of the People's Democratic Party Secretariat in Abuja, displaying placards and chanting solidarity songs for and against the national chairman of the PDP, Prince Uche Secondus. First, it was the anti-Secondus protesters who stormed the party's secretariat, demanding for the resignation of the national chairman.
We are here to express our displeasure over the incompetent, corrupt, and the bad leadership of Prince Uche Secondus. That is why we are calling for his immediate resignation as the PDP national chairman.
Another group of protesters, this time around supporters of Mr. Secondus, also barricaded the secretariat, insisting that the PDP chairman must stay.
Before 2019 election, PDP could boast of only 10 governors. He has been delivering. He's a good man and he will do more if he's going to continue to do more. So the enemies are fighting for nothing. They shall allow him to finish his tenure. On this note,
inside this hall, members of the PDP Board of Trustees, 13 serving governors of the PDP, as well as former National Assembly members, are meeting to resolve the recent crisis in the party. Although the meeting was intended to discuss with the PDP National Assembly caucus, not so much of their representation is here. Notwithstanding, participants here agree on the need to put party's interests ahead of self.
Whatever the party desire, the leaders desire us to do at the National Assembly level, you can be rest assured that it will be done.
There is no party to defect to. There is no government to defect to. We better remain together and work together, reinvent our party, and work towards the establishment of government for the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
The meeting enters into closed doors and journalists are excused.
And I thank you for coming. If you're not a member of BOT, this is the time to excuse them.
Some moments later, the chairman of the PDP Governors Forum briefs journalists about their resolutions.
This meeting has agreed that immediately the NEC of the party should be convened for the party to constitute the National Convention Planning Committee, and the early convention should be held latest by the end of October. Also, that the zoning committee for the party position should also be constituted by the same National Executive Committee to be held immediately.
The PDP has been embroiled in a fresh leadership crisis in the last 2 weeks following the resignation of 7 of its principal officers, a development that sparked protests as members called for the resignation of the National Working Committee led by Prince Uche Secondus.
And security concerns are hindering the deployment of staff and materials to rural communities for the Independent National Electoral Commission's ongoing physical continuous voters registration. That's according to the INEC chairman, Professor Mahmoud Yakubu, who spoke at a meeting with the Commandant General of the Nigeria Security and Civil Defense Corps in the nation's capital. He appeals for adequate deployment of personnel to protect materials and staff who will soon be deployed to the communities for the continuous voters registration exercise.
The CVR is now in its 7th week, having started on the 20th of June online, and then on the 26th of July, the physical registration commenced. We consulted widely with members of excess and other stakeholders before the Commission decided to commence the physical registration in our state and local government offices, that is 811 locations. Before we then devolved to the over 2,600 centers that we planned to nationwide. The reason why we haven't devolved to those centers nationwide is essentially security. And we'll continue to rely on the support of the security and civil defense in providing protection to our personnel and assets, and also the registrants themselves for the continuous voter registration exercise. Now, the second point is that your visit is coming at a very critical time, because on the 6th of November, the Commission is conducting a major election in Nigeria, the Anambra governorship election. And we look forward to partnering with civil defense in order to ensure security that will guarantee transparent and credible elections in Anambra.
And to other stories, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, today grilled the former governor of Bayelsa State, Senator Seriake Dickson, over alleged mismanagement of funds while serving as governor of the state. According to sources, Mr. Dickson arrived at the EFCC headquarters in Abuja at 11 a.m. and was released a few minutes past 7 o'clock this evening. The former governor is also being accused of mismanaging physical assets belonging to the people of Bayelsa State. Mr. Dickson was governor of the oil-rich state between 2012 and 2020, after which he was elected senator. In the meantime, the former governor of Bayelsa State has been reacting to his interrogation at the EFCC headquarters. Senator Dickson confirmed he had received invitation from the EFCC 2 weeks ago to clarify some issues on non-governmental organization alleged that they were assets he had not declared. He further stated that his family investment under the Seriake Dickson Trust Incorporated had been made between 1996 and 2012 before he became governor. According to him, investments were funded by loans and advances and repaid from salaries, allowances, savings and other sources of income. He maintains that the investments in question were declared in his assets declaration form at the House of Representatives in 2011, his governorship form in 2012, 2016 and 2020 respectively, after he left office, and the Senate assets declaration form this year. Meetings between the House of Representatives Committee on Health and National Association of Resident Doctors deadlocks, as the association says all that was discussed is not acceptable to them. The chairman of the House Committee on Health, Mr. Tanko Sununu, says members acted in good faith and have given it ample time to every side to express their concerns. Our correspondent, Linda Kigwe, reports.
An issue of this nature.
For 2 days, the House of Representatives Committee on Health has been meeting with the National Association of Resident Doctors, NARD, and key stakeholders in the health sector to end the industrial action by the union, which has paralyzed activities in hospitals across the country.
You hold on to you keep one in view.
NARD embarked on a nationwide indefinite strike, which started on August 2nd, to press home the implementation of the Memorandum of Understanding it entered into with the federal government in March 2021 on welfare and other issues which affect members.
But however, we have some issues that remain, and that issue is the commencement of payment.
Midway into the meeting, the president of the association voices his displeasure over the matter of the payment of arrears of resident doctors.
This matter has been brought down 3 times. I can assure you that this strike will not be called off if this matter is not treated.
Mr. Chairman, with all due respect, I think I take exemption to the statement of the chairman or president of NAD. He should withdraw that statement.
I want to withdraw that statement and apologize.
The committee chairman highlights some of the agreements reached so far and seeks the buy-in of the association, but that is not forthcoming.
To be administered first tomorrow, you have all the items we have discussed, where we are, so that you can have a documentation of what I've agreed. Is that okay?
It is not okay, obviously. No, I've said mine. I don't like postponing things. It is not okay, and we thank you for your time. Thank you, sir.
The meeting is hereby adjourned. Thank you all.
Speaking to Channels Television afterwards, NARD president explains the reason behind the stand of the leadership of the association.
Demands pertaining the welfare of our members, those who have lost. And as it stands, we are still having bottlenecks in every way. I'll give examples. Members on the platform of the gift mix that's still not been owed 4 months. The decisions met in the meeting is that they have to investigate for the next 2 to 3 weeks what you have verified over 4 months ago. meaning you still do not want to feel that they deserved to pay their salaries.
Following the stalemate in the discussions between the House of Representatives and NAD, negotiations will return to the Federal Ministry of Health. In the meantime, the strike continues with no end in sight. Linda Akibi, Channels Television News.
In part 2, after the break, we have an update on the resident doctor strike, plus more cholera cases in Adamawa State as 75 people died from disease in Katsina. Please stay with us. Welcome back. If you just joined us, you're watching the news at 10 live on Channels Television Lagos. A reminder of our top stories. Foreign Affairs Minister condemns behavior of immigration officers involved in assault of Nigerian diplomat. PDP Board of Trustees calls for party's national convention in October. And New York Governor Andrew Cuomo resigns over allegations of improper conduct. And it's about 2 weeks since the National Association of Resident Doctors called out its members to strike. Well, nothing much has changed here in Lagos and other parts of the country as monitored by our correspondents. Nigerians are still at the receiving end of the industrial action.
Resident doctors still absent from government-owned hospitals. The bulk of doctors available for clinical services are the consultants, and things are generally not the same. Services at the Lagos University Teaching Hospital and the Lagos State University Teaching Hospital are still low. At the Federal Medical Center, Kefi, Nasarawa State, where 60% of its medical staff are the resident doctors, services are rendered, though not optimal. The house is paying more attention to emergencies, but with limitations. Patients with severe conditions are seeking medical care in private facilities.
Consultants have been quite compliant in terms of trying to really go out of their way to see patients. They've been seeing patients, and it's quite stressful on them. I've gone around this morning. They're actually working, but still sympathetic over the whole issue.
And more frustration from patients despite these efforts.
The patient you are turning in, come back tomorrow. You don't know eventually what will happen. So
the situation is the same at the state-owned Dalhatu Araf Specialist Hospital, also in Lafia. Services are not at the usual pace. Presently, the hospital is not admitting patients, hence the empty wards.
At least we are maintaining some function in terms of services, even though it is not to the scale when they are present.
The national strike is an opportunity for resident doctors in the state to also drive home their demands.
It's not just about what the national is fighting for. We also have our own local struggles too in the state. While the national achieve theirs, we should also try and achieve ours, while we try to see how we can liaise with our government and ensure that what we're supposed to get, we'll get it from them.
Here in FMC and Ngwa Bayelsa State, I'm not aware of any register that has been opened. And we hope that the federal government does the needful, because that's not the way to go.
Compliance to the industrial action is at its high at the Federal Medical Center in Owo, Ondo State. Healthcare service is at its lowest, with the wards almost empty. It appears that the striking resident doctors are not willing to back down, and this is a sign that the action of the doctors may last longer than expected.
And the federal government is set to receive 176,000 doses of the Johnson & Johnson COVID-19 vaccine through the COVAX facility next week. The Executive Director, National Primary Healthcare Development Agency, Dr. Faisal Shoaib, told a news conference in Abuja that the federal government has committed 15% deposit for the 29 million doses of J&J vaccine expected this month. It debunks reports that the delay in the commencement of the second phase of the vaccination plan is owing owing to cases of documentation, but that the postponement became expedient in order to ensure the continuation of the tracking and tracing deployed during the previous rollout exercise. Our correspondent Gloria Mezoke reports.
As demand for COVID-19 vaccines climb in the global south, Nigeria is one of the countries racing to procure more of available vaccines. In addition to over 4 million doses of the Moderna vaccine received from the United States government, Nigeria expects fresh doses of Johnson & Johnson vaccine next week at the rate of $7.50 per dose.
We will be receiving 176,000 doses of the Johnson & Johnson vaccines tomorrow, Wednesday, August the 11th. These 176,000 doses, as you are aware, are coming out of the 29,850,000 doses that the federal government procured from the African Union. It's a single dose vaccine that doesn't require a second dose. And for this Johnson & Johnson vaccine, the initial doses are going to be focused on those people that live in hard-to-reach areas. Every single dose of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine costs $7.50 per dose. So multiply that by 29,850,000, and that will give you the exact amount of money that we're expected to pay for it.
He debunks reports that the delay in the distribution of the Moderna vaccine is owing to issues of documentation.
On the contrary, the reason why we've had to extend or postpone the launch date of the vaccine is because we are locally creating labels for the vaccines, barcodes that will ensure that this tracking and tracing continues just like we did in the first phase.
In the coming months, Nigeria expects 3.5 million doses of Pfizer and an additional 3.9 million doses of the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine. Only less than 2% of the entire population in Nigeria has been fully vaccinated, and the third wave is hardly over. According to the WHO, the implication is far-reaching unless a significant vaccination coverage is realized. From Abuja, Gloria Omezuke, Channels Television News.
Away from COVID-19, but still on health, no fewer than 13 suspected cholera cases have been recorded in Adamawa State. The State Commissioner for Health and Human Services, Professor Isa Abdullahi, confirmed this while giving an update on the cholera situation in Yola, the state capital. According to him, 3 cases were confirmed to be positive, while 10 were found negative. Meanwhile, the Katsina State government has also confirmed the outbreak of additional 134 cases of cholera in the state. The State Commissioner for Health, who confirmed this, says the state now has a total of 1,534 cases, with 75 deaths recorded across 25 local government areas.
As at 8th August 2021, a total of 1,534 cases, including 75 deaths, have been reported from 25 local governments across the state. Of the reported cases, 67% are aged 15 years and above, while 3 cases were reported to be under 1. Of all reported suspected cases, 53% were found to be male. 140 samples have been collected so far, within 43 rapid diagnostic test positive, 2 culture positive. Funtua local government had the record of highest number of cases with 384. Followed by Sabwa, who recorded 232, Kafur 215, Cherenchi 135, Kankara 71, and Jibia with 69 cases. In terms of mortality, Funtua also leads with 18, followed by Charanchi, who recorded 14 deaths, Jibia 11, Kankara 5, Sabwa and Rimi having 4 each.
And to education. In order to accommodate the rising number of enrollment into public schools, the Borno state government says it is creating more learning spaces for the students in the state. Years of insurgency has led to an influx of communities to the capital city, overstretching existing school facilities.
This is a typical public primary school in Jidari-Jere local government area of Borno state. A classroom originally intended for 50 students now accommodates over 100 who gladly sit on the floor to fulfill their motivation of learning. At Galtimari Primary School in another part of the town, the story is the same, as the classroom here is also overcrowded. The protracted conflict in northeast Nigeria has taken its toll on public schools in the state, as some of the students are mostly from displaced families living in host communities. The free food provided is an additional motivation, and while free tuition is also an extra incentive to make more children enroll on a daily basis.
We have 2,500 and above teachers, pupils. Only 12 toilets we are using. Both teachers and the pupils. Only 12.
The state of affairs is largely responsible for the poor output of students, like Amina Bello Hamid, a primary 3 student. According to her, she's not able to learn much during school hours because of overcrowding in her class. Amina now attends extra lessons in a smaller group of about 25, and the medium of communication is the local language. The Borno State Universal Basic Education is worried about this and says more learning spaces will be provided to solve the overcrowding problem until such a time displaced persons can safely return to their hometowns.
We have expanded the learning spaces to accommodate the number of pupils that being jacked off as a result of the mass influx into the state, into the metropolis.
For UNICEF, the influx of children in schools is a positive development, especially at a time when the number of out-of-school children in the country is on the rise.
In the last 2 years alone, UNICEF have provided education to over 600,000 children who have been out of school. As you may know, there are 10.5 million out-of-school children, and 60% of that 10.5 is right here in northeast Nigeria.
The state government has set a target for November this year for the opening of more towns and closure of more IDP camps, which would reduce the burden on the state capital and surrounding towns like Jere.
When the news at 10 returns, Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS, focuses on achieving self-sufficiency in rice. Please join us again. We're off to our Abuja studios where Gloria Mozoke is standing by with some more stories. Hello, Gloria.
Hello, Millicent. Good to see you. And we begin with human rights group Amnesty International, blaming what it describes as bloody month in some parts of the north on the failure of authorities to contain the farmer herder crisis. A statement released today by the group's director in Nigeria, Mr. Osai Ojego. The figures of people killed and abducted is pegged at 112 and 160, respectively, with thousands displaced from communities owing to the violence. The statement also claims that between the 3rd of July and 5th of August 2021, at least 78 people were killed and 160 abducted by bandits in Kaduna State. And this includes 121 school children of Bethel Baptist Church High School. In his message to the federal government to put a stop to the violence, Mr. Ojego says, and I quote, "The Nigerian authorities must act swiftly to prevent such attacks from happening. The slow response from security forces is clearly causing an increase in casualties. How much longer must people be forced to live in fear as such brutal attacks continue?" End of quote. Amnesty International Nigeria has been monitoring the clashes between herders and farmers and attacks by bandits since 2016. In December 2018, it published a report that documents the violent clashes between farmer and herder in parts of Nigeria, particularly in the north. An appeal court sitting in Kano today set aside the judgment of a Jigawa High Court, which nullified the leadership of Victor Oye as the chairman of the All Progressives Grand Alliance, APGA. The three-man special panel led by Justice Samani struck out the Jigawa ruling and upheld Victor Oye as the duly elected chairman of APGA. Meanwhile, the national chairman of the All Progressives Grand Alliance, APGA, Mr. Victor Oye, has applauded the judiciary for standing firm in defense of the country's constitution and its statutes. Reacting to the unanimous judgments delivered by the three-man panel of justices, Mr. Victor Oye described the judgment as a watershed in Nigeria's political history.
For us in APGA, we leave everything for God to judge each person according to his deeds. We give God the glory. We thank all our supporters, millions of them across Nigeria who stood by us. We are confident that APGA will win the November 6th Anambra governorship election. There is no doubt about that. And that's why we are receiving all the kicks, all the buffeting, because they know that APGA will win the election. And we believe in free, fair election. Once the election is free and fair, APGA will win. But we want to assure those people who think that Anambra State will be like Imo State, where somebody will come and write results. It's not going to work. And I want to use this opportunity to call on INEC to do the needful without further delay by replacing the name there by court order and put the rightful candidate there. That's what INEC should do today to redeem its image. It shouldn't wait for the next 24 hours to do so. The court has affirmed the leadership under me, affirmed Soludo as the candidate of the party. So what else are they waiting for? Let them go ahead and do the needful so that the tension will begin to cool.
West African countries, including Nigeria, will require 24 million metric tons of rice production to attain self-sufficiency by 2025. That's according to the ECOWAS Commission Department of Agriculture, Environment and Natural Resources Directorate at a press conference in Abuja, the nation's capital. The Commission is brainstorming on the regional action plan to accelerate implementation of ECOWAS Rice Offensive Policy 2020 to 2025. The ECOWAS Director, Agriculture and Rural Development, Mr. Again Traore, says the action plan has become necessary in the face of huge dependence by West African countries on other countries for rice importation. He noted that only 60% of rice is produced across West Africa, with increasing number of domestic demand for the product. He adds that factors such as insecurity, as witnessed in northeast Nigeria, is also affecting production of the product.
The reason why we are importing at this point.
Officials from ECOWAS Commission and stakeholders in the rice value chain in Nigeria are meeting journalists in Abuja for a press conference on the regional action plan for attaining rice sufficiency in the West African region by 2025.
The same goes to all the value chain.
West African countries currently depend largely on importation to meet domestic demand for rice. And according to ECOWAS Directorate of Agriculture and Rural Development, this portends threats to food security in the region.
The West African together, Nigeria, Burkina Faso, Cote d'Ivoire, Senegal, etc., total cumulated production should be meeting that 24 million metric ton. That's the target.
Rice is said to be the largest source of calories and food for more than 380 million people in West Africa. But the production of the staple in the region is still very low, largely due to poor technological application and insecurity.
The insecurity situation challenges as becoming a big parameters of food insecurity within the region.
The 5-year action plan by ECOWAS is believed to have the solution.
This regional action plan, in a way, is to accelerate the implementation of the rice offensive, to move us closer to the target of having 100% self-sufficiency.
Stakeholders, however, say there has to be more stringent measures in place for ECOWAS rice offensive policy to succeed.
It's a kind of cross-border transaction. I think ECOWAS will have to perfect those policies.
They should also begin to intervene, begin to dissuade, begin to hold meetings with these countries that are allowing import.
With more than 50% of the ECOWAS region population said to be in Nigeria, the country currently produces over 7 million metric tons of rice annually, which is 72% of the rice produced in the region, after Mali, which produces 88% of the rice. But stakeholders here say even that is not sufficient for a region that currently has a growing population and also consumption demands is on the increase. Emperor Simon, Channels Television News.
Well, that's it from the nation's capital. It's back to you, Millicent, for more on the news at 10.
We continue with the Lagos State Judicial Panel on restitution for victims of SARS-related abuses and other matters, which commenced the process of front-loading of petitions before it with a view to fast-tracking proceedings. Today, the panel took the petitions of 3 petitioners, all of whom had front-loaded their documents and evidence. The first petitioner, Kufre, put before the panel documents and proof of his claim that he was a victim of a gunshot wound from some police officers. Another petitioner, Stella Edegwa, filed a joint petition with Adeola Mukaila, who was allegedly brutalized during pregnancy. Through Edegwa, both women put documents before the panel in proof of their allegations that 3 police officers from the now disbanded SARS team at Tolu Police Station at Ajegunle, Lagos, meted out barbaric, brutal and ruthless assault on them. They identified the officers as Ade, Tompolo and Walter, and asked the panel to cause a thorough investigation of the case with a view to prosecuting the erring officers. Another petitioner, a widow, Mrs. Mustafa Ramot, in her petition alleged that a police stray bullet killed her husband on the 20th of October 2020 in the Ajangbadi area of Ojo. Under cross-examination from counsel to the police, Joseph Ebosereme, she stated that her late husband was a commercial motorcycle rider who was shot and killed on that date. The panel has ordered that a witness summons be served on the 2 suspected policemen, one of whom is popularly known as Tallest.
I was not there. The one that was there told me. And I've been hearing the name ever since before my husband was there. The news or name? I know the name, I know the man. The man, my husband always mentioned, especially that Tallest, whenever he comes home. Because my husband works that the park that is Okoko Park that is looking. So it's almost every day that he comes home and explains to me that this man always struggles, especially for money. Because whenever they pass that from Okoko, when he's coming or when he's working, they will complain that the man always collects money from him, this and that. I've been hearing the name. Can go there anytime, ask for Tallest and put them, nobody will explain to you.
On the top of that premise that the husband has been complaining
that one man used to collect money from him.
That is how they used to collect money.
No, listen to me, please. That should not believe it was the same man that killed your husband.
That is not the only police officer there. Open is not the only police officer there. But you always complain about everybody. Go there. Go from Ojo, Vokes, go down to Shibiri, ask for solace and open. They will tell you the kind of person they are. Further hearing in this petition is hereby adjourned to 24th August 2021. Witness summons shall issue to tallest and often of Ajangbadi police station before the next adjourned date.
And business news is next with Teniola Shobowale.
Banking so easy, so simple. Dial *894# now to experience it. You first, First Bank.
Thanks a lot, Millicent. Welcome to Business News. The Minister of Finance, Budget and National Planning, Zainab Ahmed, has been speaking of the government's intervention to reflate the economy following the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic. At a meeting in Abuja, Mrs. Ahmed explains that part of the plan is the introduction of the 2021 Finance Act, which targets a reduction in the cost of governance, improving human capital development, and enhancing revenue generation.
Government will also continue to make critical investments in sectors including agriculture, infrastructure, health, and education. To do so, we must sustainably address the long-standing challenge of domestic revenue mobilization. We have been doing this in part through the continuous implementation of the Strategic Revenue Growth Initiative and also through the continued incremental fiscal reforms via the instruments of the Finance Acts. We have so far done Finance Acts 2019 and 2020, and we're currently working on Finance Act 2021.
The Lagos State government has denied reports that the State House of Assembly granted it approval to take over the Lekki Concession Company. The State's Commissioner for Information and Strategy, Mr. Benga Omotosho, clarified that the government's request was to convert the African Development Bank loan from a private sector or commercial loan to a sovereign or public sector loan, which attracts a lower interest rate. That will enable the company to make some savings. He explained that the state government had acquired the full shares equity of the former owners of the company in 2014, and that there was no need to take such a request to the House. The LCC is a special purpose vehicle set up specifically to execute the Etiosa-Lekki-Ekpe toll road concession project to deliver essential road infrastructure and services along the Lekki Peninsula of Lagos. The sum of 512.23 billion naira was generated as value-added tax to the federal government in the second quarter of 2021. And that's according to latest data from the National Bureau of Statistics. The NBS report shows that the amount represents a 3.2% increase when compared to the 496.4 billion naira generated in the first quarter of this year. The figure is 56% higher than the 327.2 billion naira generated in the first quarter of 2020. A breakdown of the amount shows that the manufacturing industry contributed 44.89 billion naira, which is the highest amount generated, while the textile and garment industry contributed 77.74 million naira, which is the least value-added tax generation. Well, let's check in on the stock market now. The bull returned to the local equities market after a brief absence on Monday as key market indicators climbed by strong margins amid renewed investors' interest for some blue chip stocks. Ini John Mekwa tells us more.
Hello and welcome to the stock market report. Now, in a quick move, maybe even faster than traders and analysts expected, the local equities market bounced back from previous downturn, which started the week with more than 317 billion naira regained in value. Telecoms giant Airtel Africa and MTN Nigeria, which are among the top 3 most capitalized stocks on the NGX, were the major factors which propelled the market's main index back into the 39,000 level with a 1.58% jump. At the same time, 19 other stocks added some support to the rebound, which countered losses from 20 equities, including the likes of Zenith Bank, GTCO, and Flour Mills. Now, let's take a look at the sectoral performance table. We can see that sell pressure once again swept across 4 major counters of listed equities, but their losses from their components were minimal. Also, stocks performance activity chart ended in the green, so we leave the bull bellowing its victory until the next trading session. And that's the stock market report. I'm Ini John McQuarrie.
Thanks a lot, Ini. It's also a positive close for most of the world's major stock markets. Let's take a look at the closing numbers. And that's business news tonight. It's back to Millicent for the rest of the news at 10.
Banking so easy, so simple. Dial *894# now to experience it. You first, First Bank.
Thank you, Teniola. And New York Governor Andrew Cuomo today announced his resignation following an inquiry that found he sexually harassed 11 women, mounting legal pressure and demands for his departure by President Joe Biden and others. Simon Pusey has more in Around the World in 5.
Good evening and welcome to the Channel Studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. A Canadian citizen has lost his appeal against a death sentence in China for drug smuggling. The court said it upheld Robert Lloyd Schellenberg's sentence because evidence against him was sufficient. Schellenberg was initially sentenced to 15 years in jail, but in 2019, an appeal court said this was too lenient, leading to a retrial and a death sentence. He was detained in 2014 and charged with planning to smuggle almost 500 pounds of methamphetamine from China to Australia. He denies the charges and said he went to China as a tourist. At least 10 pro-democracy activists have been arrested in Thailand as thousands demonstrated against the country's all-powerful monarchy. The arrests come after protesters returned to the streets over the weekend, calling for the Prime Minister to resign and for the monarchy to be reformed. Frustration is mounting over the state's management of coronavirus outbreaks and the damaging pandemic measures which have been inflicted on the economy. About 100 police officers in riot gear sealed off a road near Victory Monument in the capital and used water cannon, tear gas and rubber bullets to stop a march toward Government House. North Korea says it could bolster its weapons program in response to a major joint military exercise between the United States and South Korea set for this month. South Korea and the United States have begun preliminary training, and larger computer-simulated exercises are scheduled for next week. Kim Yo-jong, the powerful sister of North Korean leader Kim Jong-un, said in a statement that the exercises were an act of self-destruction for which a dear price should be paid. A spokeswoman for Prince Andrew says he has no comment to make on the lawsuit filed against him by a woman in the US who alleges he abused her when she was 17. Virginia Giuffre, who was an accuser of convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, claims she was sexually assaulted by Prince Andrew in London and New York. Prince Andrew has consistently denied the claims. Colombian authorities have seized about 2 tons of cocaine inside a submarine. According to police, 3 people were on board of the submarine intercepted in the Pacific Ocean. It was headed for the coast of Central America. The commander of the task force said this seizure represents a loss of approximately $68 million for the illegal organizations. Despite decades fighting drug trafficking, Colombia remains one of the world's top producers of cocaine. At least 7 people have been killed in Algeria as forest fires spread in the North African country. State radio reported that some houses were completely destroyed and that schools in Tizi Ouzou province were receiving citizens displaced by the fires. The province is located around 150 kilometers east of the capital, Algiers. At least 19 fires broke out in 14 provinces across the country. Firefighters and helicopters are still trying to contain several blazes threatening residents. Guinea health officials have confirmed the first case of Marburg, a highly infectious disease in the same family as the virus that causes Ebola. The World Health Organization said the virus needed to be stopped in its tracks. Marburg virus disease is transmitted to people from fruit bats and spreads between humans through the transmission of bodily fluids. Cases are extremely rare, with the last major outbreak in Angola in 2005. It is a severe, often fatal illness that causes fever and bleeding disorders. Kenyan civil servants have been given 13 days to be vaccinated against COVID or face unspecified disciplinary measures. The head of public service said the order was as a result of the low uptake of COVID-19 vaccines among public servants, especially teachers and those in the security sector. Last week, the government said it had administered more than 1.7 million AstraZeneca vaccines, most of them being first doses. Kenya has reported more than 200,000 cases since the pandemic began. And finally, elephants that have been rescued from circuses and temples in India are treated to a feast of their favourite fruits and vegetables ahead of World Elephant Day. The lavish spread of cut watermelons, bananas, papayas and pumpkins were laid out especially for the Asian elephants at a sanctuary near the banks of the Yamuna River. The centre observes a week of events surrounding World Elephant Day, officially held on August the 12th. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the Channel studios in Lagos.
Thanks, Simon. And we're off to sports news now. Here's Ayotunde Balogun.
Yes, indeed, Millicent. Joyous days in France as Argentinian superstar Lionel Messi has now completed his move to PSG, Paris Saint-Germain, after signing a 2-year contract. The 6-time Ballon d'Or winner arrived in Paris this afternoon to complete a medical and seal his move to the French club side on a 2-year deal with an option for a third worth £25 million per year after tax, plus bonuses. Messi will receive a £25 million signing-on fee as part of the move and will wear the number 30 shirt for PSG, which was the number he wore on his debut for Barcelona. Messi, who won 4 Champions Leagues and 10 domestic league titles with Barca, joined several other big names arriving at PSG on a free transfer this summer. Meanwhile, the Argentinians' arrival at PSG is already generating mixed feelings. The French sports union sees his arrival at Paris Saint-Germain as perhaps the biggest coup in modern football. Now, the French union compared his arrival to that of late Diego Maradona's arrival at Italian club side Napoli, or that of Zinedine Zidane's at Real Madrid during the era of the Galacticos. Away from that, players of Bielsa United and Bielsa Queens received a rousing welcome from the Bielsa state government following their victory at the just concluded Aiteo 2021 Cup played in Benin City. The deputy governor of the state has assured the victorious teams that the governor will specially celebrate their victories after they triumphed in both men and women's finals. Chelsea Football Club have announced the squad they will use for their UEFA Super Cup match against Spanish side Villarreal on Wednesday and have seemingly left a spot open for Belgian international Romelu Lukaku. The Blues have been permitted a group of 25 players to take part in the traditional annual clash between the Champions League and Europa League winners. And that's a wrap on sports news. It's back to you, Millicent.
Thank you, Tunde. And the main news again. Foreign Affairs Minister today condemned the behavior of immigration officers involved in assault on diplomat, described it as a breach of Vienna Convention. Also today, meeting between the National Assembly and National Leadership of Resident Doctors ended without any agreement. That's news at 10 tonight. Thank you for watching. I'm Millicent Walker. Stay safe. Have a good night.